だからそれをね、その一番難しいのはね、お客の鑑賞力を高めるっていうのはね、これは大変なことだね。下がるのわけないんですよ。下げちゃったわけでしょ。で
Few filmmakers have shaped world cinema as profoundly as Akira Kurosawa. From Seven Samurai and Rashomon to Ikiru and Ran, his movies redefined visual storytelling and influenced everyone from George Lucas to Martin Scorsese. Yet, in the years following his death in 1998, countless clickbait headlines began circulating, claiming that Kurosawa chose 6 films that changed cinema forever. The truth is more fascinating. Kurosawa never sat down to write an official list, but throughout interviews, memoirs, and retrospectives, he often spoke passionately about the films and directors that transformed his view of what movies could be. He admired Western filmmakers for their humanity and craft, while celebrating Japanese and European artistry that pushed boundaries and shaped his own cinematic philosophy. In this video, we'll uncover the real films that Kurosawa himself mentioned. Works that made him laugh, cry, and rethink everything about storytelling. These weren't just favorites. They were revelations that helped him forge his distinctive voice as a director. Each one left an indelible mark on him, and through him, on cinema itself. Number 6, The Gold Rush, 1925, Charlie Chaplin. When Akira Kurosawa spoke about the films that shaped his imagination, his memories often drifted back to the silent era, to the flicker of black and white images that first made him believe in cinema's emotional power. Among those early revelations was Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush, 1925. Kurosawa saw it at age 15, a time when Japan was recovering from the Great Kanto earthquake, and Western movies offered both escape and hope. In something like an autobiography, Kurosawa recalls that he devoured every Chaplin picture available. The Gold Rush stood out for its perfect balance of humor and heartbreak. The image of the little tramp boiling and eating his own shoe for dinner struck Kurosawa as both absurdly funny and deeply tragic. Here was comedy built on human suffering, not cruelty. A tone he would later explore in Ikiru and Drunken Angel, where laughter slips in through cracks in despair. Chaplin's influence went far beyond tone. Kurosawa studied how Chaplin used movement as language. Because silent cinema had no dialogue, emotion had to live in the rhythm of bodies. The shuffle, the stumble, the hesitant glance. Kurosawa often told young filmmakers that motion itself is expression, and that truth can be traced directly to Chaplin's pantomime. The kinetic chaos of Seven Samurai, or the frantic energy of The Hidden Fortress, owes as much to Chaplin's choreography as to samurai legend. There was also a moral connection. Chaplin's empathy for society's outcasts resonated with Kurosawa's lifelong interest in dignity amid degradation. Whether portraying drunken doctors, impoverished bureaucrats, or aging Ronin, Kurosawa returned again and again to the little tramp's conviction that kindness could survive humiliation. Visually, The Gold Rush taught him how to stage emotion in wide frames. Chaplin placed his lonely figure against vast, indifferent landscapes, snowy mountains, desolate cabins, endless streets. Kurosawa later echoed that visual loneliness in Dersu Uzala and Redbeard, using environment to externalize the soul. Chaplin himself was aware of his impact in Japan. His films were adored there, and when he visited Tokyo in 1932, he was greeted like royalty. It's poetic to imagine a young Kurosawa in the crowd, seeing not just a comedian, but a model of artistic independence. Chaplin, the actor-director who controlled every frame of his work. By the time Kurosawa became a global auteur, he still spoke of Chaplin with reverence. To him, The Gold Rush represented cinema's highest calling, to make audiences laugh, then suddenly make them care. In one interview, he said that films should move the heart first. Only then will the mind follow. That principle guided everything from Ikiru to Dreams. So let me ask you, when was the last time a film made you laugh and cry within the same scene? Do you think modern filmmakers still carry Chaplin's spirit, or has that blend of humor and humanity become a lost art? Number 5, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920, Robert Wiene. Before Akira Kurosawa became a director, he was a painter. An artist who believed that line, light, and shadow could tell a story long before a single word was spoken. It's no wonder that the first film to truly haunt his imagination was the German Expressionist classic, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. He first saw the movie as a child in Tokyo in the early 1920s, just 9 years old, sitting in a small theater as jagged sets and distorted streets unfolded before him. In something like an autobiography, Kurosawa remembered the shock of seeing a world drawn in angles. The sets looked like a nightmare sketched by a mad artist. Buildings leaned at impossible tilts. Windows sliced the screen like knives, and shadows had minds of their own. Even decades later, he could recall that sensation of entering a dream made visible. At the time, he didn't have words for it, but Caligari showed him that cinema could externalize thought, that emotion and psychology could be rendered visually. Robert Vina's tale of hypnotism and madness wasn't realism. It was expressionism, where fear and obsession warped the world itself. Kurosawa carried that lesson for life. You can see traces of Caligari's influence in his noir period. The cramped Tokyo alleys of Stray Dog and the feverish corridors in The Bad Sleep Well echo the claustrophobia of Vina's painted town. Even the fog-swept dream sequence in Throne of Blood owes a debt to Vina's ability to turn the subconscious into architecture. When Kurosawa filled his frames with wind, rain, and movement, he was doing what Caligari did with Crooked Streets, using the environment to mirror the mind. For Kurosawa, this early brush with German Expressionism also clarified that style and substance were inseparable. The slanted buildings of Caligari weren't just decoration, they were the story, visual proof that the protagonist's sanity was collapsing. Kurosawa later said that in great films, form and content must grow together like the two wings of a bird. That idea began with Vina's film. There's another dimension too, moral ambiguity. Caligari's twist ending, revealing that the entire narrative might be the delusion of an asylum patient, foreshadowed Kurosawa's own fascination with perception and truth. Think of Rashomon, where 4 conflicting stories leave the viewer uncertain of reality. It's no exaggeration to say that Vina's surreal classic planted the seed of Rashomon decades before Kurosawa made it. When a movie distorts reality to express emotion, like Caligari or Rashomon, does it feel more truthful or less? And can you remember the first film that made you realize that cinema could dream as vividly as the human mind? Number 4. John Ford's Westerns, Stagecoach and The Quiet Man. John Ford. If Akira Kurosawa had a spiritual mentor in Western cinema, it was John Ford. He said it plainly, "John Ford is really great. When I'm old, that's the kind of director I want to be." Few statements reveal Kurosawa's reverence more clearly. Long before he became the emperor of Japanese film, he was a young man studying Ford's work frame by frame, learning how the American director turned landscapes into poetry and human struggle into myth. Kurosawa reportedly screened Stagecoach, 1939, dozens of times. It wasn't just the story that fascinated him, but the filmmaking itself, the choreography of movement within the frame, the way Ford used editing to guide emotion, and the rhythm between action and stillness.
Haven't I any right to live? What have I done?
We're the victims of a foul disease called social prejudice, my child.
To Kurosawa, Stagecoach was cinema distilled to its purest elements. It taught him that a director could communicate through composition and tempo without resorting to dialogue-heavy exposition. When Kurosawa made Seven Samurai 15 years later, he admitted that Ford's visual grammar was in his bones. The slow build toward chaos, the balance between heroism and community, even the quiet pauses that let viewers breathe before the next storm of violence. But Ford's influence went beyond technique. Stagecoach and The Quiet Man, 1952, revealed a moral clarity that Kurosawa admired deeply. Ford's protagonists were flawed men who sought redemption through action, cowboys, soldiers, or ordinary citizens confronting a moral frontier. That thematic core resonated with Kurosawa, who filled his own films with samurai torn between duty and conscience, doctors wrestling with guilt, and bureaucrats rediscovering purpose. Ford taught him that courage could exist without perfection, that dignity could emerge from struggle. Kurosawa also loved Ford's humanity. He once called The Quiet Man one of the most beautiful things ever put on film. The movie's Irish countryside, glowing with technicolor warmth and its gentle humor, showed Kurosawa another kind of beauty. The beauty of reconciliation. Where Stagecoach explored the chaos of society's margins, The Quiet Man celebrated belonging. Kurosawa took both lessons to heart. Films like Ikiru and Dersu Uzala balance pain with grace, tragedy with moments of still peace, a rhythm that traces directly to Ford's influence. In interviews, Kurosawa often said that he felt Ford's spirit hovering over his own sets. Whenever he faced a difficult shot, he asked himself, how would Ford do it? That question became a guiding principle for decades. If Kurosawa saw Ford as the model of greatness, who might fill that role today? Is there a contemporary filmmaker whose work captures that same mix of technical mastery and moral depth? Number 3, La Dolce Vita, 1960. Federico Fellini. When Akira Kurosawa first saw Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita, he reportedly walked out of the theater dazed. The film's swirl of images, the flashing paparazzi bulbs, the treacherous glamour of Rome's nightlife, the lonely figure of Marcello Mastroianni drifting through excess, felt like an entirely new language of cinema. In a conversation preserved by Cinephilia and Beyond, Kurosawa said simply, "I love La Dolce Vita. It was a film that dared to abandon conventional structure in favor of rhythm, emotion, and mood, and Kurosawa recognized it as a revolution." He admired how Fellini blended realism and fantasy without ever losing empathy for his characters. Marcello's slow moral disintegration was framed not as judgment, but as tragedy.
Allora, lumaca va al policella, va bene. Giulio, dai, fammi fare una fotografia. Non è possibile, caro.
Kurosawa saw a kinship there. He too was fascinated by men torn between duty and temptation. Where Fellini used reporters and movie stars, Kurosawa used samurai and bureaucrats. But both were storytellers of the human soul. Technically, La Dolce Vita gave Kurosawa permission to loosen his own structure. He had long been known for tight narratives, Rashomon's precise geometry, or Ikiru's carefully segmented halves. But Fellini's episodic style, where one sequence flowed dreamlike into the next, expanded his sense of what a film could be. You can feel Fellini's echo in the impressionistic rhythm of Dreams, 1990, and the fragmented vignettes of Dödskaden, 1970. Kurosawa once told students that form must follow feeling, and La Dolce Vita proved that emotional truth could guide structure just as firmly as plot. He was also captivated by Fellini's fearless visual design. The giant statue of Christ suspended over Rome, the fountain sequence with Anita Ekberg, the grotesque parties at dawn, these weren't mere spectacles. They were visual metaphors for a society adrift. Kurosawa, a painter by training, understood how image could carry meaning beyond words. In Dreams, his floating ghosts and color-coded nightmares mirror Fellini's surreal pageantry, cinema as subconscious expression. On a deeper level, Kurosawa admired Fellini's moral ambiguity. Both directors resisted cynicism while acknowledging decadence. La Dolce Vita ends not with punishment, but with a quiet look across a beach, a moment of possible grace. Kurosawa carried that sensibility into his own finales, ambiguous, tender, unresolved. Their lives also ran in parallel. Both men began under authoritarian governments, both faced criticism for excess, and both ended their careers as global elders of film. In Kurosawa's late interviews, Fellini's name appeared again and again, proof that admiration once earned never faded. So here's a question for you. Do you think La Dolce Vita still speaks to today's world of social media and celebrity? Or has its message been lost amid modern noise? And if Kurosawa were alive now, what kind of sweet life would he find in our age of constant spectacle? Number 2, La Strada, 1954. Federico Fellini. Before La Dolce Vita shook the world, Federico Fellini made a smaller, more intimate picture that reached directly into Akira Kurosawa's heart. La Strada. It told the story of Gelsomina, a naive young woman sold to a brutal circus strongman named Zampano. At first glance, it's a fable, part road movie, part morality tale. But for Kurosawa, it was something far deeper. In a conversation archived by Cinephilia and Beyond, he said he liked La Strada a lot, admiring the way it mixed tenderness and tragedy in equal measure. What moved him most was Fellini's empathy. Gelsomina's wide-eyed innocence and Zampano's animal rage mirrored the contradictions Kurosawa explored throughout his own films.
No! Oh, no!
The meeting of purity and corruption, light and shadow. He saw in Fellini's story a profound compassion for damaged people, a belief that even cruelty can coexist with longing for connection. That balance between suffering and grace became a hallmark of Kurosawa's humanism, visible from Drunken Angel to Ikiru. Stylistically, La Strada also affirmed something Kurosawa already suspected, that cinema could blend realism with poetry without losing credibility. Fellini's dusty roads, drifting carnivals, and trumpet melodies felt authentic yet dreamlike. Kurosawa adopted that duality in his own work, framing grimy backstreets and rain-soaked alleys with the precision of a painting. He once said a film should have both mud and beauty, and La Strada embodied exactly that. The performances fascinated him. Anthony Quinn's physical ferocity contrasted with Giulietta Messina's delicate gestures, a dynamic Kurosawa later echoed between Mifune and Takashi Shimura in Seven Samurai and The Lower Depths. He learned from Fellini that opposites create energy on screen, that compassion feels strongest when set against brutality. Music, too, played a role. Nino Rota's haunting trumpet theme gave La Strada its soul. Kurosawa studied how a single melody could transform narrative into emotion, later applying the lesson to Fumio Hayasaka's and Toru Takemitsu's scores in his own films. For Kurosawa, sound wasn't background. It was the bloodstream of storytelling. When he spoke about La Strada, Kurosawa also praised Fellini's courage to focus on society's outsiders. Performers, vagabonds, misfits. He said these characters reveal what we prefer not to see in ourselves. That observation could easily describe Kurosawa's own cinema. Like Fellini, he used marginal figures to question morality, pride, and loneliness. Decades later, when journalists asked Kurosawa which filmmakers he felt closest to, Fellini's name came first. Both men saw film as a humanist art rather than an academic craft. Their worlds looked different. Fellini's Baroque Italy, Kurosawa's disciplined Japan. But their hearts beat in the same rhythm. So here's something to ponder. Do you respond more to the spectacle of La Dolce Vita or to the quiet ache of La Strada? Does empathy in cinema strike harder when it's whispered through tragedy or shouted through grandeur? For Kurosawa, the answer was clear. Compassion was the truest form of beauty. Number 1. The Best Years of Our Lives. 1946, William Wyler. If any film ever pierced Akira Kurosawa's heart, it was William Wyler's The Best Years of Our Lives. The American post-war epic follows 3 servicemen returning home from World War II, struggling to rebuild their lives amid a world that no longer feels familiar.
Hey, look, there's a ballpark.
When Kurosawa first saw it, he was overwhelmed. In a documentary about Wyler, he recalled through tears, "This is the only thing I've ever seen where the picture started, and 3 minutes later I was dissolved in tears, and I cried for 2 hours plus after that. And I'm not a pushover. I laugh at Hamlet." That confession captures more than admiration. It reveals how cinema could open him emotionally in a way few works could. Kurosawa, who had witnessed Japan's own post-war despair, felt that Wyler had translated a universal truth. The battle may end, but the wounds linger. He was astonished by the restraint of Wyler's direction, the quiet bar scenes, the unspoken trauma, the way a handshake could replace a speech. In interviews years later, Kurosawa would praise Wyler's ability to film dignity, What impressed him most wasn't the grandeur of the production, but its empathy. These weren't heroes returning to ticker tape parades. They were ordinary men facing invisible scars. Kurosawa saw a mirror of his own society's struggles and perhaps his own survivors' guilt from enduring wartime Tokyo. From a technical standpoint, the best years of our lives also influenced Kurosawa's craft. Wyler's deep-focused cinematography and long takes fascinated him, particularly the way the camera allowed multiple emotions to unfold within one frame. In Kurosawa's own films like Ikiru and High and Low, he used similar techniques to show characters isolated in the same room, worlds apart in feeling. Wyler, he said, used the camera not as a spy, but as a witness. Kurosawa also admired Wyler's humanity toward his characters. Even when they faltered, turning to alcohol, clinging to lost identities, the film never judged them. That compassion shaped Kurosawa's later work. You can feel its echo in Redbeard and Dersu Uzala, where dignity and redemption emerge through empathy, not perfection. What truly bound Kurosawa to the best years of our lives was its moral clarity. He once told a colleague that Wyler proved movies could be both popular and profound, emotional yet unsentimental. For Kurosawa, that balance was the holy grail of filmmaking. So here's a question for you. When was the last time a movie made you cry, not because it was sad, but because it was true? Kurosawa cried for 2 straight hours because he recognized himself and humanity in Wyler's Returning Soldiers. That's the kind of honesty he spent a lifetime chasing behind the camera. Akira Kurosawa never issued an official list of 6 films that changed cinema. Yet, through decades of interviews, memoirs, and public talks, he revealed what truly mattered to him. Not rankings or prestige, but emotional truth. His admiration for William Wyler's The Best Years of Our Lives showed how deeply he valued empathy and storytelling. Fellini's La Strada and La Dolce Vita taught him that cinema could be poetic and raw at once. John Ford's westerns, Stagecoach and The Quiet Man, demonstrated how a camera could speak louder than dialogue, how landscapes could mirror the soul. From the stylized nightmares of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari to the humor and humanity of Chaplin's The Gold Rush, Kurosawa absorbed everything he saw. These weren't just influences, they were building blocks for his own vision. Each film expanded his understanding of what movies could achieve, how they could move, shock, comfort, or awaken. In turn, Kurosawa's work reshaped global cinema. Without his example, there might be no Star Wars, no The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, no Magnificent Seven. Directors from Spielberg to Coppola, Lucas to Scorsese have credited him as a guiding light. Kurosawa's genius was not in imitation, but transformation. Taking lessons from the West, refracting them through Japanese philosophy, and creating something entirely his own. When asked late in life what he wanted from cinema, he replied simply, "To see the world as it is, and to make others see it too."